We're talking about 21st century redlining right here, right now. 4 of the largest redlining settlements with the United States Department of Justice for redlining occurred within the last 8 years. And tragically, for the people of our state, as of December 2022, 2 of the largest settlements were with banks based in New Jersey. And the latest settlement with the Bank of Los Angeles just in January is an indicator that redlining is alive and well across the country. This morning we're here with New Jersey leaders to say enough is enough. We're here to say that regulators, local leaders, and housing and racial justice advocates must demand more from the banks operating in New Jersey in order to end redlining once and for all. Fines are not enough. Despite settlements in the past, redlining persists in lending and banking, and redlining is taking on new forms, such as appraisal discrimination. We're here to say that we will not close the racial wealth gap or ensure that BIPOC businesses and families thrive in our state unless we get meaningful commitments from banks and financial institutions to invest and lend equitably. This is why we want to say that beyond the consent agreement with the Department of Justice, we need agreements. We need CRA agreements with community stakeholders for the Lakeland-Provident merger in this crucial that this is crucial to counteracting the full damage of Lakeland's redlining. I'm now going to ask Phyllis Salo-Kay, President for New Jersey Citizen Action, to talk a little about the details of the Lakeland Bank settlement that's just occurred with the DOJ. Phyllis?
There's a chair back here. Well, first the consent order. Started with the consent order, which you see up here, and there were handouts on the table. In September of 2022, the United States Department of Justice entered into a historic $13 million consent order with Lakeland Bank for engaging in a pattern or practice of lending discrimination by redlining in the Newark metropolitan area. Lakeland Bank was charged with violating the Fair Housing Act and denying low and moderate income Black and Hispanic consumers access to credit with reasonable interest rates and clear terms and conditions. The consent order said that the bank had to invest, it's actually up to $13 million in loan subsidies that they're going to provide in Black and Hispanic neighborhoods in the Newark area, money for outreach, money for consumer education, and money for the development of community partnerships to provide services that increase access to residential mortgage credit. They also, the consent order said that the bank has to open 2 new branches, and we're going to talk a little bit more about branches, in neighborhoods of color, and they were very clear. One of the branches has to be in the city of Newark, and they did not determine where the other branch would be. But we're going to talk about where we think it should be. After this happened, Citizen Action filed a formal protest with the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, challenging the proposed acquisition of Lakeland Bank by Provident Bank. We demanded the settlement provisions outlined in the Department of Justice consent order, along with a New Jersey-specific CRA agreement, that's a community reinvestment agreement, that is negotiated with input from community organizations, labor unions, civil rights, and faith-based leaders and other stakeholders, be included in the actual merger application in order for the transaction to receive regulatory approval and move forward. That is that we said we don't want this merger to happen unless several things happen. And we had very specific demands. I don't want to do this because I'll get unplugged. Very specific demands for the state of New Jersey. We wanted them to develop a CRA agreement that had measurable goals to provide below market rate mortgages discounted home improvement loans, small business loans, construction and permanent financing, especially to nonprofit developers, and loans for community and economic development. We want the bank to establish a community advisory board composed of diverse community leaders who work with low and moderate income people in the BIPOC communities. We also want them to develop a transparent process that includes community input when they decide where these branches are going to go. And we're going to talk about branches in a minute. And then, because it's Newark that has been redlined, and the Newark metropolitan area, and as you can see, we've drawn a red line around the city of Newark. We had some special and specific demands that we've included for the city of Newark. And that is, when they do this branch, when they decide where the branch is going to be, that they hold public hearings and they do a needs assessment to decide where that branch should be. We've asked them to invest in the acquisition fund established by the Mayor's Equitable Growth Initiative to mitigate the effects of owner-occupied homes being purchased by large-scale investors. We've asked them to participate in the Live Newark program and to assist first-time homebuyers in the city. And finally, to invest in the Neighborhood Development Fund that turns city-owned land into residential and affordable housing. But we are not done, and the Mayor of Newark will have an opportunity to include additional things on the list as we begin to negotiate a CRA agreement. So I just want to talk a little bit about branches, because this is a unique settlement where it says you have to build 2 new branches, one in Newark and one someplace else. So it used to be you could walk down the street and you could see bank branches on every corner, just like Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts. That doesn't exist anymore. The most visible presence of any bank in any community has been their local neighborhood branches. Besides providing real people in person to assist customers and assess the bank's financial services, branches are the foundation for community reinvestment. Branches also provide an entry level of financial education to customers and can be the first line of defense against sophisticated scams and frauds that are being perpetrated upon consumers, especially our vulnerable seniors. Mergers and acquisitions are the #1 reason for the closing of branches in the country and in New Jersey, and especially small banks. New Jersey has 16, in the last 3 years, there have been 16 mergers that have either taken place or are still pending. Since the pandemic in 2020, branch closings have doubled nationally. New Jersey has experienced, in the last 3 years, we've lost 279 branches in the state of New Jersey, or 10% of all our branches. This is not the direction we want to be going in. This order opened up the ability to establish 1 new branch in Newark, and we have recommended that that second branch be placed in Ocean County, because Ocean County has lost 50 of their branches, a third of their total branches. It's got a huge senior population, and we feel that the citizens of Ocean County need that branch. So we need to have public hearings, needs assessments to figure out where those branches are going to go. Final word. We don't file protests against banks easily. We haven't done a whole lot over the years because most of the time a bank that's merging will come to the table, work with us and community leaders, and negotiate a CRA agreement. Well, that's not happening anymore. Many of the banks have refused to develop agreements in which they set goals, define products, and show us what the lending requirements are for those products. So we've had to turn to the regulators for help. And in the past, the regulators, when we file a challenge, They usually ignore what we say in the challenge and talk mostly about safety and soundness, which is something they should talk about, but they should also be talking about community reinvestment. Well, it seems like there's a new sheriff in town, because the response to our challenge that we filed against the merger with Provident Bank was answered by the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, and more than half of it dealt with the issues that we have raised right up here. So we're really pleased to say that someone's listening, and perhaps things are finally going to get better in New Jersey for banking consumers and customers. Beverly? Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Phyllis is going to do this.
I'm supposed to introduce the mayor, and of course, I forgot that. Hard to forget that. There. Mayor Baraka's leadership in addressing racial injustice, income inequality, and deep-rooted poverty align completely with Citizen Action's goals for ensuring that New Jersey works for all its residents, not just the wealthy or the politically connected. So it should be no surprise to anyone here that he has joined us today, standing with us and calling for an end to redlining in his city of Newark and in the state of New Jersey. Mayor Baraka is leading the way and has been for many years with innovative solutions that not only address long-standing inequalities, but also serve as models for elected leaders and policymakers across our state and our nation. His latest proposed measure to combat aggressive and predatory real estate interests shows a deep understanding of the causes behind the affordable housing crisis in Newark and communities across New Jersey. His calls for new fees on non-rent-controlled property owners who raise rents more than 5%, and his policies to mitigate the purchases of owner-occupied homes by large-scale corporate investors, coupled with his commitment to create thousands of affordable housing units in the city of Newark, have demonstrated that Mayor Baraka's understanding of the needs of not only the residents of Newark, but of all New Jerseyans is far and wide. The mayor's support for the inclusion of our demands, not just for Newark, but for the entire state of New Jersey, are proof of his commitment to the economic security of working families and seniors throughout our state. Mayor Baraka.
Thank you, Chair. Just want to first thank New Jersey Citizen Action for always being on the right side all of the time, and the work that you guys do consistently in this city in a proactive way, but also in response to the kind of injustice and inequity that we see happening here today. Most of the things that was just a credit to me, I have to accredit to the Equitable Growth Commission that works for us with us in the city of Newark. And I know Deborah Smith-Gregory, head of NAACP, sits on that as well. The idea about 5%, people who raise the rent above 5%, putting a surcharge on that, that's directly from the study and advice from the Equitable Growth Commission. So I just want to say thank you to the people who sit on that commission, who consistently gives us good ideas and things to do that we implement. Redlining has been historically pervasive and deliberate in this country, and cities like Newark have been at the front end of the abuse of the kind of redlining. It was made legitimate or valid by actually the FHA, when they had a policy that prohibited or limited the kind of mortgage capital used to buy homes in places like Newark, considering our city undesirable or hazardous, and so they did not invest in these communities deliberately. It also prevented people from getting insurance and credit in places like that, like Newark. And the reverse began to happen as well. So you had insurance companies who price gouged and inflated prices in communities where they knew there was no investment going on, no insurance happening in those communities, which made it cost prohibitive for people to get insurance even if they wanted it in the first place, which tells you why these communities are suffering and look the way they look very deliberately, and it means that we have to take very deliberate action in reversing that. That's why we stand with New Jersey Citizen Action and asking the Federal Reserve before they sanction this agreement, sanction this merger, that they should enforce what the consent order said by the Department of Justice, and specifically the issues as it relates to the city of Newark, the things that we thought of through our Equitable Growth Commission and ourselves in the city of Newark, the things that we think are important in our city to reverse the effects of redlining, right? So we're still fighting to reverse the effects of redlining that took place years ago, decades ago. So for them to still be doing it now kind of compounds the problem even more. It makes it even more difficult for us to dig ourselves out of a hole that was deliberately created for us to fall in by the private sector and the public sector. Probably the first public-private deal that was made to make sure that black and brown people had no way out of these communities of poverty or these circles of poverty, making the American dream almost unattainable for thousands, even millions of families in America. So we stand with New Jersey Citizen Action. We agree that money should be put into the Community and Investment Fund. We believe that money should be put in our acquisition fund as we battle with the private sector or small companies, large companies that pretend to be small companies that buy up these properties in the city of Newark, switch it over and make it difficult for them to become affordable. The city has taken a proactive stance at buying the properties ourselves, along with some small local minority black and brown developers to purchase these properties and begin to create affordability in these communities. So we agree that money should be invested in that as well. We also think money should be invested in home ownership because the wealth gap in New Jersey is one of the largest in the country, and at the basis of that wealth gap is home ownership. If you look at the difference between a city like Newark and a city like Milburn or Livingston in the same county, you would see that the wealth gap, the income gap is enormous, but also the wealth gap is even that much worse at the same time. So we think that investing in home ownership is a great idea to help us close the wealth gap in this nation. And starting in Newark is a great place to start since redlining was used heavily in our city. And proof that it's still being used means that we have to be at the forefront of this struggle along with the folks at New Jersey Citizen Action and all like-minded people in the state of New Jersey who believe in equity, who believe in justice, who believe in democracy, who believe in fair play. We think that everybody should be on this page trying to make sure New Jersey is indeed fairer and more equitable. And we believe if it's fairer and equitable, it will indeed be stronger. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Baraka. And I'd like to ask Hazel Applewhite, who is the Executive Director for Newark-based Ironbound Community Corporation, to talk about the impact of redlining on that community. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Hazel Applewhite, CEO for Ironbound Community Corporation. Just want to say hello to all the like-minded people in the room. Thank you for New Jersey Citizen Action for calling on this, right, and for standing up for what is right. We are here, that's a saying that I have, we are here, and we're gonna deal with it, right? So I'm gonna kind of piggy off of Phyllis on the banking part of things, right? So within the Ironbound, we've had maybe about 2 or 3 banks that have closed, right, within the last 365 days, right? And what that does to the Ironbound community, which is a community of Black and brown folks, it does not allow them to walk to the bank. We have to think about this, right? Not all community members are computer literate. I'll use it that as a word, no offense to anyone, right? They can't get on an app, right? Our elderly seniors can't get on an app and use the app to bank their money, to scan a check. They need to actually walk in to a branch, right, and get services provided to them. We also have our small businesses in the Ironbound, right, where these branches, if this branch opens up, because there is an agreement, right, for 2 branches to be opened up, and one of them is supposed to be in the city of Newark. If one of the branches is supposed to open in the Ironbound, it allows our community members to have access to that bank, our seniors to have access to that bank, our small businesses to have access to that bank. It also brings a sense of financial confidence, right? Because being able, the first step to financial literacy and financial capability is to open a bank account. To feel secure that you have some place to go. When our community members don't have branches to go into, they go to secondary options, which is very high costing to them by going to check cashing. That cost a lot of money. By also banking in homes, which is not safe. You know, that old-time remedy of putting your money under that my grandmother used to do, right? Put your money under the pillow or under your mattress, right? Not healthy. We want our community members. At ICC, what we do is we teach about financial literacy, right? And part of financial literacy is being able to become credit worthy. Once you start banking, you become credit worthy. So that's the reason why ICC stand with New Jersey Citizen Action on pushing forward our demand, right, on having a branch open and having the branch open in the Ironbound. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hazel. I'd like to ask Deborah Smith-Gregory, who is the president of the Newark NAACP and a member of the Equitable Growth Commission that the mayor mentioned, make a few remarks now. Deborah?
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So I'm looking at this redlining in New Jersey map, and I feel like I have stepped back into high school because we were learning about this, and Citizen Action put this beautiful red line. Redlining is ugly. It's ugly. It's an ugly practice, and it is time for us to disrupt systemic oppression and reframe the opportunity in underrepresented communities. That is a prerequisite to equity. And I want to narrow it down to where we are right now. Across the street at the Y, there are families that are stuffed into small rooms, whole families, children still going to school, but they don't have a place to stay. When we talk about underrepresented, all you have to do is just go right across the street. They are bursting at the seams. We need for our residents to have a piece or an opportunity to have some home ownership. One home. I know a lot of people are talking about, I got a home over here and a home over there. We want one home. And the thing of it is that right now, the way the city of Newark is, the mayor gets bashed because it's saying Newark is gentrifying, right? Okay, so as a homeowner here, I welcome people coming in to Newark. At the same time, we have to take care of the underrepresented families who have been here and give them that opportunity to be a homeowner here in their home city. So we got this narrative that it's got to be one, gentrification, or the other, poverty and underrepresentation. I say it has to be multi-generational. The income has to be comparable, inclusive of those who can buy a house for $1 million and those who need help buying a house for $100,000, and everything in between. That is the only way that our city, mayor, our city, is going to be the great city that it is on its way to becoming. And so we stand with Citizen Action. It is calling people out. It is calling corporations out. That is the only way that the disruption, the system has to be disrupted. And when you file and you win, we win. We win. And so we stand with New Jersey Citizen Action. I can't say anything about Ocean County because my whole focus is on Newark, right? And so the additional demands that Newark stands to gain, that's what we want. We want to be able to offer home buying opportunities to underrepresented Newark residents, many of which are single mother families. Okay, so why should a child have to go to the Y and then go to whatever school they're going to, and they're asked, what is your address? And they say, the Y. That's unacceptable. And so keep up the good work. The NAACP Newark, New Jersey branch stands in alliance and solidarity with you.
Thank you. And now I'd like to ask David Jude Weiner, who's the president of CWA Local 1081 and also co-chair of the New Jersey Citizen Action Board, to make some remarks.
You did say former, right?
Yes,
Yes, okay, that's all right. I have many formers. Hi. CWA Local 1081 is the union representing the 625 non-supervisory employees of the Essex County Division of Family Assistance and Benefits, which is a stupid name, but it was formerly the Essex County Division of Welfare. I've been president for 43 years of that union and a decades-long member of Citizen Action and former co-chair. I'm also a former Newark resident until politics compelled me to move elsewhere. There's an old expression I won't repeat here, but that's the reason I did. But when I lived here, we lived in public housing in Weequahic Park. Most people don't remember there was public housing in Weequahic Park after World War II. I don't go back to World War II, close. I lived in South Boyden. So I didn't even live in a house myself until I was 34 years old, and that's the house I live in now. So the vast majority of our members are of color, predominantly black and brown, and most live within the city of Newark or its immediate environs. The importance of household wealth has become abundantly clear during the pandemic. In fact, this is one of the few times I wouldn't wear a mask in public because I do it for Citizen Action in this cause. But as my brother over there, I'll have it on shortly because I have it right here. The wealth difference between families is, for instance, their savings and checking accounts, retirement accounts, savings, houses, cars, and what they owe on credit cards and loans and mortgages. That's the difference. Black households and brown have a fraction of the wealth of white households, as the mayor stated, leaving them in a much more precarious financial situation when a crisis strikes and with fewer economic opportunities. Wealth allows households to weather a financial emergency, such as a layoff, which our members have not had, thank God, in 43 years, or a family member's illness, which they have had. Wealth also provides families the means to invest in their children's education, to start a business, relocate for new and better opportunities, buy a house, and have greater participation in the democratic process. Wealth is not only a question of financial savings, it provides access to the political process and therefore exerts political influence. The persistent black, white, brown wealth gap, as the mayor spoke of, is not an accident, as Phyllis indicated, but rather the result of centuries of federal and state policies that have systematically facilitated the deprivation of black and brown people. Having obtained their job, our members with the County of Essex, many of them have rented for many years and have attempted to become homeowners. Redlining by banks has denied a number of them this opportunity to become homeowners as part of their efforts to leave generational wealth to their families. As part of the resolution to the societal scourge of redlining within and around the city of Newark, CWA Local 1081 demands the following. The proposed Lakeland Bank and Provident Bank merger must only be approved with a New Jersey-specific CRA agreement to counteract the impacts of Lakeland's illegal redlining practices, as stated in New Jersey Citizens Action's challenge of the merger filed with the Federal Reserve of New York. And secondly and lastly, the number of banks within Newark that have disappeared over the recent years has been spoken of, must begin to be replaced. Our union members are not adapted to online banking, many of them, and need brick and mortar banks as part of their financial literacy education. Finally, I just want to say that having just stepped off a year and a half ago as a 30-year member of the board of the YMCA, I want to see what great work they do. And while it's not a preferable place to be, it is a very safe and healthy and wholesome place to be until housing can be found for the families that live there. So thank you very much.
Thank you, David. And now I'd like to call up Larry Ham, who's chairman of the People's Organization of Progress here in the state of New Jersey. And Larry, I think, is someone who can help us summarize and really bring home the key points that we've talked about today. Larry? Thank you.
Good morning. The People's Organization for Progress supports New Jersey Citizen Action and all of its allies in this effort to get a CRA agreement with both Provident and Lakeland banks. I think it's important to say that redlining and racist policies of financial institutions must stop, and they must stop now. We've just come out of African American History Month, and I think it is important to say that the banking industry profited from the slave trade. In fact, there are banks that are currently in existence built on wealth that came from the enslavement of Africans in this country. During the period of racial apartheid in America, called the Jim Crow era, the banking industry provided the financial economic underpinnings for that Jim Crow system. And this continued into the post-Civil Rights era after the passage of the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, and it continued in the form of policies such as redlining. And for the last 60 years or so, Black and brown communities, urban communities, working and poor communities have been caught in a web of institutional financial racism. Organizations like New Jersey Citizen Action and the NAACP and many other organizations have been fighting this. And it's important to understand that what progress has been made has not been because of the beneficence of the leaders of the financial and banking industry in this country. It's been because of the pressure brought by grassroots organizations and people fighting for justice. Phyllis asked me to note that Provident is willing to sit down and discuss the CRA. I would urge Lakeland to do the same. We need this CRA. But the last thing I want to say is this. I'm confident that we're going to be victorious in this struggle. There is going to be a CRA. It's going to happen. We're going to be victorious in this struggle. But the proof of the pudding is in the eating. And the question will be, will this agreement actually be implemented? This is not the first agreement that financial institutions have entered into with municipal governments and nonprofit organizations to try to bring about some type of equity. So while we push forward on this CRA and we look forward to the victory, the real test is going to be in the implementation. And when that fight comes, the People's Organization for Progress will be side by side with New Jersey Citizen Action and all the allies here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Larry. Of course, I think we've heard today, we know that there are many positive and effective policies put in place by leaders such as Mayor Baraka. Citizen Action continues to do our work we do HUD-certified housing counseling. We do the investigations of housing discrimination. We have a lot of the tools in place. Organizations like NAACP, Ironbound, POP are here. We're watchdogging. We're making sure that we're on top of these instances of redlining. We have a lot of good things in place, but we need to continue to pressure, as Larry said. We need to make sure that things that we fight for are implemented and that they really are meaningful. So with that, we'd like to start taking questions. I'm sorry, Phyllis wants to make one comment. I apologize.
I'm sorry, I just want to speak to what Larry said, and that is, since our existence, since 1985, Citizen Action and our allies have negotiated over $40 billion with New Jersey banks in below market rate mortgages, discounted home improvement loans, construction and permanent financing, and economic development loans. So we do have agreements. There have been agreements that are in place. And yes, Larry, we've seen some progress. We are now moving backwards with the consent order. Well, the consent order shows we're moving backwards, and so there's still a lot more to be done. Sorry.
That's okay. Thanks, Phyllis. Questions? Yep.
Can you just explain what the response was from the Federal Reserve and what all of the avenues that you're pursuing to get the CRA?
Sure. I'm going to let Phyllis answer that question.
Normally, when the Federal Reserve responds to our challenge, they do not speak to the specific things that we put in, like the demands. We, for the first time in my 38 years here, we received a letter, a 5-page letter from the New York Fed, and more than half of that letter spoke directly to the things that are up on the board. Now, we don't know if the merger is going to be approved. They're saying it's going to close in third quarter, second quarter. We really have no way to know. But Provident Bank has agreed to sit down with us and our allies and begin to negotiate an agreement. We want that agreement to be put into the merger application, which would be the first time in history that I think that has ever been done, so that when the bank is examined, they not only will be looking at their safety and soundness, which the bank keeps someplace that I don't know where they keep that, but they will also be looking at the demands that we have put out, how many mortgages, how many subsidies, who they've given it to, what are the incomes, and where do those people live.
Yeah, and I'd just like to say that in some cases, we don't have agreements with the banks, but elements of things that we ask for, we sit down and work out with them. It's not always a written agreement. Just want to make that clear. Any other questions? Yes?
In brief, what do the terms of the CRA agreement do for the people of Newark that the consent order from the DOJ does not?
Well, it doesn't. What we have asked is that all of the demands that are specific to Newark be included in the agreement. That's not currently in the consent order. And the consent order talks about 2 branches. They talk about one in Newark. They don't talk about where it is. We have called for it to be in Ocean County. We've called for public hearings and the needs assessment to be done to determine it. We don't want the bank to just walk in and say, plop down a bank and say, that bank is going here. The most important thing is the consent order does not require the bank to set specific monetary goals for lending. It doesn't require that banks put down what the lending criteria of those loans are so that we can go tell our people you're qualified for that. And it doesn't include product descriptions. So often when people go to the banks, there's a better product that no one's being shown for those people. So the agreement, the CRA agreement, would outline all of those things in a very clear-cut order.
And I think specifically, we're saying that the leaders in Newark, the mayor and other leaders, need to be at the table to talk about the specifics of how the consent order will be carried out in Newark where the redlining occurred.
Can you just review the timeline? Again, you mentioned possibly second quarter that the merger would be approved.
Right.
That's
Is there any
projected.
sense of timing for the meetings with Provident?
Yes, yes. Provident, I believe, is the last day of the month, you told me.
We have
Maybe.
scheduling, it depends, but
It looks like it's the
soon we will
last
be
day of
meeting.
March.
And-
One at a time if you don't
Sorry,
mind.
go ahead. I'll
Thank
leave
you.
it to you.
It looks like the first meeting where we're gonna be sitting down or looking at a screen with Provident is gonna be at the end of the month, of this month of March. It's a process, it doesn't all happen at one meeting. We'll bring in community members, but they have agreed to meet with us.
Sorry, I don't want to monopolize, but in terms of timing of opening the branches, there's no sense of that at this point? Because the
No.
merger's not approved, so. this
No,
would
the
not
merger
be-
hasn't been approved, so
Yeah.
we don't know. That it?
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much. Thanks for bringing attention to this issue. Thank you.